All right, guys. Israel just assassinated the Yemeni, or you could say the Houthi Prime Minister, obviously in the country of Yemen, in their city called Sanaa, I believe it's called. If this were the other way around, and any Benjamin Netanyahu or any Western leader got assassinated by another country via missile strike, precision missile strike, there would be an absolute uproar. It would be, oh my God, we have to declare war immediately. This is an assassination. This is murder. Blah blah blah. Everyone's really hasn't been any word whatsoever about Israel striking their capital city and taking out their prime minister and his cabinet, mind you. There was someone like, the sports minister present. It's pretty crazy. Like, just to not even like raise the question, like, wait a minute, killing a prime minister, is that assassination? So this one's pretty nuts, although it's quietly nuts. No one's talking about it. So I thought I would cover it here. So let's have a look here. Over here. All right, so we want to start here. So Israel eliminates Houthi Prime Minister and Yemen strike in a bold escalation of Middle East tensions. There's also that escalation of Middle East tensions. The Houthis are aligned with Iran. Iran might decide to retaliate. By the way, not investment advice, officially not investment advice, just saying gold and silver will shoot back up if tensions, well, they're shooting up anyway, but they'll just shoot up more if tensions continue between Israel and Iran and pick back up. So Israel conducted a precision airstrike on August 28, 2025 in Sanaa, not Salah, Sanaa, Yemen, eliminating Houthi Prime Minister Ahmed al-Rahawi and several senior officials. The Israel Defense Forces justified, see, here's the thing, because there's The Hague and international law. So the Israel Defense Forces justified the operation as self-defense. Well, like while you're pounding your enemy into the dirt, you go, why are you attacking me? And then it's self-defense. Basically that. There's a meme about that. Self-defense against Houthi missile attacks on Israel, but the Iran-backed group vowed fierce retaliation, potentially widening the regional conflict and drawing global scrutiny over international law. So international law really comes in to effect here. So I just wanted to say, this is like some hot takes off of X, formerly Twitter. Israel can murder the prime minister of Yemen with zero consequences. If Yemen killed Netanyahu, nukes would already be flying. I agree, exactly right. Israel just murdered prime minister of Yemen and their entire cabinet. I agree that that's how it looks to me. It's just a look, but it's not a good look. If anyone had done this to Israeli prime minister and cabinet, they'd be considered by Western media as the worst terrorist in the world. I agree. So what does that make Israel? They're obviously a terrorist state. I agree. I don't like Cenk Uygur, but I agree with him here. He's an idiot, but I agree with him here. Israel bombed and murdered the prime minister of Yemen along with several cabinet members, and there is zero outrage in Western media. I'm not big on outrage, but it's definitely worth talking about how like nobody cares. But I don't think that there needs to be outrage. I think there needs to be justice, and it looks to me, my hot take is that it looks pretty unjust. It's barely even a story. The level of impunity is breathtaking. So let's go over here. So I went over to Grok and asked some questions. I said, does it appear that the Israeli strike on the Yemeni prime minister complied with IHL, that's international human law, and does he and his cabinet appear to have been legitimate military targets when the missile strikes killed them in Sanaa? So let's skip the first part. We need to skip through this because Grok gave some really long answers. So we're going to kind of skip around and just try to get the meat and potatoes out of here. So we can skip date and location, and we already know the Israeli claims it was a legitimate target. The Houthi claims, the Houthis stated the strike targeted a civilian government workshop, not a military operation, and condemned it as a violation of international law. A Houthi defense minister source denied targeting of military figures, claiming Israel attacked civilian targets to punish Yemenis for supporting Gaza. So that part's important. Next, the IHL principles relevant to the strike. IHL applies to international and non-international armed conflicts and governs the conduct of hostilities. The key principles relevant here are distinction. Parties must distinguish between combatants and civilians. Okay, that's pretty obvious. It's the Geneva Convention, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Military necessity. Attacks must be necessary to achieve a legitimate military objective, such as weakening the enemy's military capacity. Okay? Proportionality. The anticipated military advantage of an attack must enough be expected harm to civilians. You're right. So you must limit harm to civilians as much as possible, and that also goes into precautions in attack. Parties must take feasible precautions to minimize civilian harm. You kind of know about this stuff. It's called collateral damage. And so were al-Rahawi and his cabinet legitimate military targets? Under IHL, individuals or objects may be legitimate military targets if they contribute to military action and their destruction offers a definite military advantage. So, status of al-Rahawi. Houthi governance and military role. The Houthis are okay, let's skip that. Direct participation in hostilities. Civilians lose IHL precaution if they directly participate in hostilities. So again, we know that the Houthis claim they were conducting just a basic government workshop. Okay, so the cabinet composition. Reports indicate other targeted ministers included the Houthi defense minister and possibly the chief of staff, both of whom have clear military roles. If these figures were present, their targeting would likely align with IHL, as they are directly linked to Houthi military operations. However, ministers of justice, youth, and sports or social affairs are typically civilian roles unless evidence shows their involvement in military activities. By the way, Israel has offered no evidence. They just said they were attacking us, and that's basically just their excuse. There's no evidence. The IDF described the target as a Houthi terrorist regime military target. Of course they did. I mean, obviously, did the strike comply with IHL? So I'm going to skip down here to the analysis and conclusion. And actually just the final answer. Okay, it is unclear whether the Israeli strike on Yemen's Houthi Prime Minister and his cabinet fully complied with international humanitarian law. So let me just add something to that. Where is Israel's evidence that they were conducting something military? Do you think they'll ever provide it? No, of course not. Do you think anything will ever happen to Israel? Do you think anyone's really going to get upset? No, of course not. Due to conflicting accounts and insufficient public evidence. If al-Rahawi and the targeted ministers were directly involved in Houthi military actions, as claimed by Israel, they could be considered legitimate military targets. So where's the evidence? And the strike could align with IHL principles of distinction and necessity. However, the Houthis claim, and we know what the Houthis claim, they claim that there was a government workshop, which it says right there. And so this suggests a violation of distinction and proportionality if civilian officials were harmed without military justification. Again, Israel has not provided any military justification. They just say they were harming us, and so we did this to them. The thing is, everything changes when you get into assassinating a prime minister. That should change everything, but in this case, apparently it doesn't. So, in response, the Houthis have vowed to kill Netanyahu, saying, you killed RPM, so we'll kill yours. If they kill Bibi, will the Houthi response comply with IHL and The Hague? And so here I'm just going to skip to the conclusion, and this is the part where I think it gets pretty unfair if you're sitting there looking at the reality and you're the Houthis. A Houthi attack to kill Benjamin Netanyahu would likely violate international humanitarian law and the Hague Convention. So if they respond, they likely violate international law in The Hague, unless executed with strict adherence to the principles of distinction, necessity, proportionality, and precautions in attack. While Netanyahu's role in directing military operations could render him a legitimate target during hostilities, the Houthis stated retaliatory motive and their history of imprecise attacks suggest a high risk of indiscriminate harm to civilians, violating IHL's proportionality and distinction principles. Additionally, a covert killing outside a combat context, which Israel just did to the Houthis, would constitute an unlawful assassination under the Hague Convention, 1907, etc., which Israel just did to the Houthis, but it doesn't seem to matter when Israel does it. Given the Houthis' limited precision capabilities, oh, right, because they don't have the technology, you see? They don't have precision strike capabilities. And so it's not okay when they do it. So I said, what if the Houthis made all the same combatant claims the Israelis just did and killed Netanyahu in a targeted strike that minimized civilian deaths? And then I said, shorten it. If the Houthis claimed Netanyahu was a combatant due to his role in military operations and killed him in a targeted strike, minimizing civilian deaths, the actions could comply with IHL if evidence supports his direct participation in hostilities. The strike would need to meet distinction, proportionality, and precaution requirements, avoiding excessive collateral harm. However, the Houthis' retaliatory motive, so even if they did all that, their retaliatory motive and the Hague Convention's prohibition on assassination could still render the act unlawful if it is deemed treacherous or purely vengeful. By the way, the Houthis did vow such revenge. It's up there in the feeds. They said they're going to kill Bibi Netanyahu in response. So what if the Houthis proved Netanyahu approved the strike on their PM, a military action, so they approve a strike on Bibi, a counter-military action? Short answer. If the Houthis proved Netanyahu approved the strike on their prime minister, establishing his direct participation in hostilities, a targeted strike on him could be lawful under IHL if it minimizes civilian harm and meets distinction, proportionality, and precaution requirements. However, the strike's retaliatory framing risk violating IHL's prohibition on reprisals and the Hague Convention's ban on assassination if conducted treacherously. So they no matter what, they risk being treacherous and looking like they want to do it as a reprisal. So no matter what, basically the Houthis can't respond, or they're the ones who violate international law. And Israel has the ability to do targeted strikes and precision strikes, and then say they were combatants. That's basically what that's all they have to do. They get away with it, and under international law, under this reading, it really appears that it is not lawful for the Houthis to even respond, unless all they do is just hit some legitimate military target of the Israelis or something like that. Which, who knows? Maybe that's what Israel wants. Maybe that's what the Houthis really want. But anyway, there you go. It's not a fair world, and it is what it is. So if you like this kind of content, please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks, everybody. Base Gardening out.